So I've just been informed that we're recording. Actually, I was informed like 2 minutes ago, but you were talking. It was really good, which is typical. So, Wally, I'm going to totally butcher your name. I got Wally right. Wally. Okay, I'm not going to do it. You can say it. Yeah.
Just Adamchik.
Adamchik.
Yeah.
Okay, Adamchik. With Firestarter, sitting down here on the line. So I really appreciate that you have taken the time. And so welcome to the line, Wally.
Well, the cliche, it's great to be here.
He hasn't decided that yet. So we'll find out when we're done with this. But this is all about honest, real conversation.
Yeah, I find that works in the construction industry, so that's all right.
Yeah. So you travel around the country. I think I've seen you in every state but your home state. Whenever I've seen you, first time I saw you, you were speaking at the Dirt World conference in Houston, Texas. So, just kind of give us a little bit about your origins. Like, how did you end up in this seat here? And your company, Firestarter. Just a brief statement so that people can listen as you're telling your story. What is Firestarter in a sentence?
Quote, I speak and consult on leadership and culture in the construction industry.
There we go.
Why Firestarter? Because Wally Adamchik Enterprises sounded really stupid.
Well, I love that you didn't name your business after yourself. I'm going to offend a lot of people when I say this, but I personally don't want to name my business after myself because I want it to be able to go beyond myself. And some people have been very successful at that, but I am not smart enough to have that type of success.
Me either.
Yeah. So, yeah, tell me a little bit about your origins.
Well, if you go all the way back, I grew up on Long Island, which to many of our listeners makes me a damn Yankee. That's okay.
Yep.
But my brother and dad were construction guys in New York City. So I grew up in that ethos. I was a helper on jobs when I was 13, 14, probably breaking all sorts of labor laws, but we could do that back then.
Well, they probably didn't exist back then.
Exactly. And just being a helper. And was fortunate enough to be able to attend the University of Notre Dame on an ROTC scholarship. Wouldn't have been able to afford it on a blue-collar salary. Commissioned in the Marine Corps, 10 years in the Marines, came out, got into business, got into consulting, got my MBA at Carolina, and the rest is history, as they say.
So New York's a big state.
Mm-hmm.
What parts of New York did your dad and brother work on?
In Manhattan, basically New York City.
So that's like a whole nother state within the state or world.
That's a different world.
Wow.
My brother always had wads of cash. And I'm like, what is it? He goes, sometimes you gotta make things happen. I'm like, oh, okay, right.
Oh, wow.
That guy running the elevator is the most important guy on the job site.
Word. Man, I think I'd like to get your brother on the podcast. That could be some really interesting stories, man.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So they worked in construction. What was their specific trade?
When my dad first got in, this is before I was born. This was after he got out of the military. He was a steel lather and actually helped build the Verrazano Narrows Bridge.
So step back. A steel what?
Lather, they call it.
Okay.
And, tie and rebar, I guess, those kinds of things.
That's real work.
Yeah, and he built the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. Right, it connects Staten Island and Queens. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. And Brooklyn, and I drive over that bridge.
Yeah.
And I drive over that with my kids, and your grandfather.
You tell them that every time, right? That's a
freaking
rule.
Time,
yeah.
Right? And now they're
That's
26,
badass.
and they're like, "Is this the one that Grandpa?" Yes, yeah. But that's part of the nobility of this industry.
Absolutely.
Our people build really cool stuff, and even if it's not really cool, it's really important.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's so life-changing. He would have built that. Like, how many years ago were we talking?
It's a lot. It was in the 50s.
In the 50s.
Late 50s, I think, yeah.
And we're still driving over it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a testament to, imagine if, we take so many of these things for granted.
Yes.
And it's like, imagine, how would that work if the bridge wasn't there? Like, how would you do that? Like, you drive across the bridge, and it's like, I often am telling my kids things like when we're sitting in traffic, and if I'm going to be really honest, I'm telling myself too, because I'm hugely impatient and I easily am frustrated. And so I'm sitting there in traffic and it's like, wow, okay, this isn't all that bad. You know, I recently went on a road trip to Indiana and the guy that I was with goes, we were kind of complaining about some traffic and he goes, yeah, well, imagine what this was like in a covered wagon.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, thank you. So your dad was a steel lather.
And then his health changed and eventually my dad were floor layers.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Wow. And then your brother went into the industry doing the same thing?
Exactly right. Followed
Yeah.
my dad, probably went to work for the same company initially. They were both union guys.
Well, they worked in Manhattan. That makes sense.
Yes, it's redundant, I guess. And so, yeah, he went into the trades and, they were craftsmen.
Yeah.
Right? They weren't, I mean, they did incredible work.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's misunderstood about the trades.
Yeah.
It's the difference between a carpenter and a cabinet maker. Well, even carpenters
Yeah.
are craftsmen.
Absolutely.
Right. And,
Absolutely.
And it may be a rough finish.
Yeah.
But it's a fine product.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. You learn a trade and you learn different divisions.
Yep.
And anybody that's ever read a spec book knows that there are, 26, 28, different divisions of trades, and even beyond that.
We're creating new ones.
We are creating new ones all the time. But you look at that specifically related to a carpenter. Yeah, you might have a rough carpenter and you might have a finish carpenter. And it's like, I was a commercial electrician or an industrial electrician versus a residential electrician, and neither one is bad. But here's the deal. I could do residential work, but I was nowhere near as skilled as the guy that did that work every day.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, when I started my first company, I couldn't bid the jobs and be competitive in the residential market.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's wrong with me? And it was just a different type of work. And the same with a rough carpenter versus a finish carpenter. You probably don't want your cabinet maker framing out a building. It'll probably take too long. But that doesn't mean that the rough carpenter, like, we each have our place and we learn what it is that we need to learn and execute that well.
And I think that's one of the things that's missing in high school these days. I mean, during COVID, I was replacing a spotlight out in the backyard.
Yeah.
And my son at the time, I think age 16, I was up on the ladder and I needed him to hand me the light.
Yeah.
And I'm up there. I look down at him. He's looking at me. I look down at him and I said, "You have no freaking idea what I'm doing, do you?" He goes, "No." I'm like, "How did you learn?" I said, "Well, I took electric shop and when I was your age, and Uncle Bob was an electrician, yada, yada, yada." And these kids don't get exposed to that stuff. And, good news, bad news. We're exposing them to other stuff. But, our conversation just now about, finished carpenter, rough carpenter, whatever, kids look at us like what?
Yeah.
It's construction. Like, there's so many ways to go, MEP, oh my gosh. And if there's an interest, we're doing a much better job in educating now than we ever over the last 30 years, I think, now than we've ever had, but not than we ever have, but than we have in the last generation. But man, there's so many opportunities out there that,
oh my goodness. Yes.
That if somebody's listening to this going, check it out.
Well, I think the opportunities are endless. And one of the things about the trades in particular, and we talk about this a lot, I love our country. I love being an American. I think that the American dream is still alive and well. And what my understanding of the American dream is that you can come from nothing, and with hard work and grit, you can build something for you and your family, and build whatever you want to build. The sky is the limit. And I think the trades are very similar in that you can go from a shovel in the ground to a CEO.
Mm-hmm.
And, even in my story, it's like that's literally how I started. And, now I'm sitting here on camera doing a podcast with you, and people always ask, well, how do I get to do that? I think it's really important, if whether you're a young person or whether you're starting over in life. I went through apprenticeship, and I'll never forget the guy that sat next to me was in his 40s. and we were both first-year apprentice. And I was 17 and he was 40. He didn't miss it. He was just changing his career and his life, and that was a good thing. But the key with that is if you put the work in, you can go wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to do.
I was doing a podcast a year or 3 ago, and it was a couple of young guys that were recent college graduates, engineers, and they'd created it for recent college graduates, engineers, to try to expand their horizon and all that stuff. And they said, well, what's your advice to people like us?
Yeah.
I said, well, I'll tell you the exact same thing I told my children when they showed up in college, both college athletes, by the way. I said, show up, shut up, and do the work. And then
show up, shut up, and do the work.
And then you can talk. But until you establish some level of credibility, you don't get to do anything. So
you should make that a t-shirt.
Do the work. Right. Yeah. It's, I'm going to be a TikTok millionaire. Okay, cool. Do you know how hard those people work?
Yeah, really.
Right. I mean, you see 60 seconds of video and, look how easy it is.
Yeah.
The creative side, to come up with ideas, to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those successful people are doing the work.
Are you comfortable with pulling the microphone a little bit closer? You said you're your speaker, so,
Yes.
I don't know if that intimidates you.
I'm comfortable.
But yeah, they're doing the work. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Like, if you're watching this podcast right now, you're not seeing any of the work that's going on. Wally and I sat down and we're just talking, but behind the scenes, people are doing the work so that this comes together. And this wouldn't work if it was just you and me.
No, because we're not that good.
That's exactly right. I think that's an interesting thing. We talked a little bit earlier. We were talking about creatives, and I actually hate that term.
Yeah.
And the reason that I hate that term is I actually believe that we're all creative. The carpenter and the videographer, they're the same. And is what I mean by that is you have someone who is learning their trade in videography and editing and being able to pull things and put them together. That's no different than the carpenter that can look at a set of prints and a wall and be like, this is how I bring that together. And even deal with the things that aren't on the prints, because, hey, anybody who has been in the trades knows that the blueprints are perfect every time. There's never an adjustment. It always works out the way that we draw it on the paper to how it is in real life.
You never got that pony for Christmas, did you?
Not at all. Oh, my goodness gracious. So your dad and your brother, that's how you come by it, honestly. You said some things earlier that we'll get into about Firestarter a little bit later here, but it's like, so you were exposed to that right out of the gate. When I was a young man, my father was a carpenter.
Yeah.
And I knew that I didn't want to be in construction. I was 100% sure that I didn't want to be in construction. It's not what I wanted to do. I even went to school for some other things, and I got a job in construction to pay for me to be able to do that because I could make money quick and easy.
Yeah.
And I think my bosses planned this. Then I started making too much money that I could shift to do the other thing. And it was like, what? So I think that it's really interesting how I think we're all creatives. I think that the opportunity is there, and it's about being skilled at your craft and learning it and becoming better at it, and then moving on to the next thing, whatever that might be. And when you talk about the work of the TikTokers and the behind the scenes and all of that stuff, I find it really funny that you and I are talking about TikTok. That's awesome. I have a TikTok. Do you?
I do not.
Wow.
I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn.
You do. Yeah.
But I don't have time to be on many platforms.
Yeah.
So I spend my time on LinkedIn where I can deliver the most value to the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I see a lot of your posts on LinkedIn. It's probably my favorite place for gaining information and communicating and networking in business. But I think that's revealing of who we are and our age demographic a little bit, maybe. But yeah. Well, I want to ask you a question. I gave you a little bit of a heads up, and I ask everybody this question, and we're in season 2 now. So maybe I need to come up with a different question, but I haven't yet. So But what is a tool or a piece of gear that Wally just cannot live without, that you have to have?
I would say there's two.
Oh, he's already breaking the rules. Typical Marine.
Yeah.
You know,
First one's a pen
mm,
and a notepad, and getting thoughts out and seeing them and refining them. And oh, by the way, there's something in that process from a neurological point of view that doesn't happen when you're hitting the keys, right?
well, that's really interesting. We talked about this earlier. I didn't know we believe the same thing.
Yeah. Well, it's the doctors say it; they just can't tell you why it's the case,
Yeah.
right? But there's places in our brain that illuminate when we're writing. So writing for me it's a creative process, but it's a clarifying process.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. The other part is a remote, so I can click slides and advance them when I'm speaking to people. But I would say more so the pen.
Yeah. That's really interesting. That's one of my favorite things. I write a lot. I journal every day. I remember years ago, I read a book and it talked about worry and anxiety. And this was fascinating to me. They said, get a notebook, you know, and just write out all your worst fears.
Yeah.
Well, write it all out. And it was when I read about it, the guy said, he goes, it will help you process them, which is what you just said. And then once you've processed them and you face them, they're nowhere near as big as you thought they were.
No, you read it and you say, I was worried about that, or that doesn't have. But again, our brains are wired for the Serengeti or something like that, and
Yeah.
we have fight or flight kicking in. And I'll tell you what, if you're going to be somebody in leadership, you have to be a little bit of a neuroscientist.
Yeah.
And recognize that we're managing hormones inside of ourselves, and our phones absolutely are one of the worst things that we can do, because 80% of the when you go to your news feed, 80% of the things are negative.
Yeah, you're right.
Which juices cortisol, which gets us all jacked up like we're on Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy.
No, it's not. And it maintains, stress isn't bad, but constant stress is.
No, stress is great.
Yeah.
At the right moment, but
Yeah.
we are under this perpetual
Oh, I agree.
stress. Thank God the election is over. At least that one, we don't have to deal with that one, whatever side. But we're not designed for that.
Yeah.
And so we then have to, just as I decide I'll have salad instead of French fries, I have to make that decision to put the thing down.
Yeah.
Turn it off.
Yeah.
Put it away. But it has created this dopamine jolt in us. So it's killing us.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think it's. I feel for people that are younger than me, because I'm like on the cusp of a generation that, you know, when I was on the internet, you could still hear the dial-up modem, you know, and it's like my kids, if we weren't establishing boundaries at home, younger people, it's just everywhere. You're exposed to everything. The best example that I could give you is when my kids were growing up, they didn't understand what commercials were like I did, because of all the streaming services and all the, you know, you'd put on Netflix and you'd watch a show and there's no commercials.
Yeah.
And which is funny, because it's kind of coming back around, because advertisers are like, wait a minute, we still want a piece of that. And so we were watching something the other day, and my son was like, why are there so many commercials? And I'm like, let's talk about the 80s and the 90s, son. Oh my goodness. Well, you talked about something related to speaking, and I think this is really important. And so we at Blackline, you know, we have a couple of verticals. You know, we do brand strategy and marketing for the construction business, trade world, and manufacturing, all that stuff. But then we also have our training institute. And one of the classes that we offer is actually public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that we offer that is, when I became a project manager, I took a college level public speaking class. And it was actually one of the hardest classes that I had to take. She would have us, you know, give these speeches. And then this is why it was hard. These people would have these cards the rest of the class, and they would sit there and rip you apart well, you said 37 times. You said, and this is my point. I took that in project management, and I didn't understand why I was taking a public speaking class. Someone had encouraged me to do it. And so at Blackline Training Institute, we offer public speaking classes specifically in the construction space. And you're talking about that. I think it's really important. I'm curious, why do you think public speaking is so important? And that's something that is coming into our world more.
Well, unless you're going to be a hermit, you're going to interact with people.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be out in the world, you have to be able to persuasively and charismatically, not a good word, get your point across.
Yeah.
So, then I would even say for this next gen who spends their face on a device, the ability to talk to people face to face and then to an audience is probably even more valued. Right or wrong, we ascribe or we interpret or define. We look at somebody and go, "Oh, they're good in front of an audience. They're good in front of people. They're good in front of a job site meeting," and we assume they're competent.
Ooh.
They may be the least competent person in the
Yeah.
room, but far worse though is the person who is supremely competent, who we perceive as incompetent because they're not good in front of the audience.
Yeah.
So I wasn't afflicted by the fear in the public speaking class.
Yeah.
I was kind of put on the face of the earth to run my mouth, but I get training on it regularly. There's ways to do it to get better at it.
Yeah.
That's what professionals do.
Yeah.
But I agree, and both my children have taken public speaking in college and benefited from it.
Yeah. Well, I think we tend to have this thing. We hear a public speaking class and we think Winston Churchill, Ronald Reagan, JFK. We think, I'm going to speak to thousands. And it's like, if you are in a job trailer and there's 5 people standing around you, guess what? You're public speaking.
Exactly.
And to your point of what you just said, I think it's so important. I think everybody should take public speaking. But I think it's so important for project managers and leaders in the trade space to study that because of what you just said and how it can save time, resources. Because honestly, the more that you hone in public speaking, you're honing in speaking with intention. You would be amazed. I've taken public speaking classes more than once. And I was amazed at how much garbage was also like, what I've learned is how to hone in what I'm saying. And some people that are listening, like, really? You learn how to hone it
Well,
in? Imagine how much worse I was. Yeah. So I think that's a big essential in leadership. So let's talk about Firestarter.
Yeah.
And so, hey, Caleb, just so you know, if you want to adjust his mic, it keeps dropping. So
at my age, things drop. Sorry.
Well, we don't edit anything, but sometimes I wish we did. So we talked a little bit about Firestarter earlier, and we've talked about public speaking in construction. We've talked about leadership, and I am really curious. Tell me what Firestarter is, and what your vision is and your mission is, so that people know.
Yeah, the vision is to help people have better days.
Come on.
Some people say, so here I'm sitting in front of a group of 30 construction foremen for, company XYZ. And I'm like, hey, fellas, and now ladies, you don't have to do everything I say. But I'll tell you what, if you do a lot of what I say, at the end of the day, you're going to have more smiles and more dollar signs.
Yeah.
And I think that's worth it. So teaching leadership to constructors, right? Because we have tremendous doers.
Come on.
Who then get promoted into positions of supervision, but they've identified themselves as doers, so they continue to do, which means they're working 60 to 70 hours a week, because in addition to doing, now they're planning, scheduling, timesheets, et cetera, and they have zero quality of life. They're in a bad mood. That's bad for their family. It's bad for their people. So we on one level we teach leadership skills,
Yeah.
so that there can be more smiles
Yeah.
and dollar signs on the job site. Okay, so what's it? Communication, coaching, what is leadership, et cetera, et cetera. So under that umbrella of leadership, broadly, then we get into some of the culture conversation of okay, so that's the individual, but how does the company then sustain that great culture? And oh, by the way, I say people are your best profit strategy.
Oh, I agree.
That's true, but what kind of people doing what?
Yeah.
And that comes back to a culture piece.
Yeah.
I believe I can't. This is not a number, but I think 70% of the construction companies in America never want me to show up because I'll stir the pot. But there's a percentage of them, and we know them, and you have interviewed those people, and we start to recognize their names.
Yeah.
And they're these exemplars who are chained. They've always been great companies.
Yeah, come on.
But now they're learning how to tell their story.
Yeah.
Through, dare I say it, social media.
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
you mean I need a website and a Tickgram page, whatever? Yeah, if you want to tell your story, you do. And there's a biblical thing about this, about a bushel and a light.
Yeah, come
right? On. Don't hide your message.
Oh, yeah.
So culture now is competitive advantage only if you tell people about it.
So why do you think what and I think this is pretty prevalent in construction. Maybe I'm wrong. Actually, no, you just said this, but you also said you made up the number. So
yeah.
Why do we hide in construction?
Yeah, because this I do good work and it speaks for itself mentality. And there's truth to that.
Yeah.
If you're building cabinets in the kitchen, right? Like, oh, Susie, Josh came in and did our kitchen. It was wonderful. You should have him in. Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
But if you're going to run a multi-million-dollar company and need lots of people, or a billion-dollar company and need lots and lots of people, you damn well better have a story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we all have a story. The question is, are we telling it or not?
Well, a good story that is articulately told.
Exactly.
And this comes down, oh my God, dare I say values.
Yeah.
Right. You can't have a consultant in a chair and not hear the word values these days. Right. And I say values 2.0. You can still go to websites now and see safety, quality, and integrity.
I was going to say integrity is always in there.
Yeah. It just make me vomit.
Yeah.
Right. Anybody can say it.
Yeah.
But what about the website where you go to says, instead of integrity, it says we deliver on our promises. It's in your words, right?
Yeah.
Look, we all know it's integrity, but it's said differently.
Yeah.
It's said in your words, count on us. I don't know, whatever it is. And that's generated probably by a group of employees who say, well, this is who we are. So, I can stack up 3, 4, 5 different contractors and see the words and go, oh yeah, there's the integrity one, but it doesn't say safety, quality, integrity because some MBA said I needed that 25 years ago. And oh, by the way, your website looks like it was designed 25 years ago.
Yeah. When the dial-up modem that I was getting on the internet with.
We
absolutely.
could handle that. Yeah.
I think that, we started a whole business on brand strategy to help people do that. But I think that in construction, in the trades, in particular, I love the way that you put it in us hiding our story and hiding. And we do get caught up in this mentality of, well, my work should speak for itself. And it's like, yeah, but it's like, I used to say before I took multiple public speaking classes, and just to be real, even if you think you're good at public speaking, like I arrogantly have thought, you can never take too many of them because you just learn new things. But I used to say to people when I would communicate something and they misunderstood it, well, that's on them. It's like, that's on them. I didn't mean it that way and they interpret it that way. That's not my problem. And my work should speak for itself. That's on them statement.
Yeah.
And the reality is we are all wired differently. Anybody who's listening who is married knows that that's true.
Yes, that's exactly what went through my mind when you said that's on them. Yeah.
I mean, it's the truth. And we have to learn how to communicate in a way that they understand. And a good leader has invested in learning the communication of how to communicate. That's why, listen, there's a reason that TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, all these different things exist. Do you know why? Because they reach different people that are wired differently. And so if you're a leader or you're a business and you're wanting to communicate your story, as you said, the work is cut out for you because it can't just be one vertical.
Yeah, and that makes it hard. And I can't measure the ROI. But let me pause for a second.
You can correct me because you're the professional.
No. One of my favorite definitions or descriptions of communication or cooperation, I can't even remember it because it's been so long. And I stole this from I don't know where. But cooperation is not so much our ability to get along with others. It's our ability to smooth our rough edges so they can get along with us.
Yeah.
The question is, do you know what your rough edges are? Which gets into self-awareness.
Oh,
and that is the gold of leadership.
Yeah. All right, let's drill down on that. Let's talk about self-awareness because if you're listening and you just said, well, I'm pretty self-aware, chances are you're not. Yeah. And I only know that because I have said that. And through the public speaking classes, it's one of the best ways for me to learn how unaware I was. I wouldn't realize the things that I said, and I wouldn't realize, and then also becoming self-aware in investing in culture and learning who you are, who your company is. We talked about this a little bit earlier with like Strength Finder.
Yeah.
And learning how you're wired and what's there. That's the only way that you can kind of learn that, oh, I do this. That's a blind spot that I have. And by definition, if it's a blind spot, then you don't see it and you're not aware. So how do you help people become more aware? And just to, I'm very aware of what you said. People probably don't want you in their company because you stir things up. But if you want to grow, you have to stir things up.
Yeah. So there's a book called True North. And there's a companion guide to it. It's called the True North Field Guide or Field Book. And it's got a lot of white space. And we had created our own version of this 20-something years ago, and we use it in executive coaching. But this came out, and it's like, oh, that's better. We'll just use that one. So I've got 3 guys right now, presidents of companies who I'm coaching, who are working through this. And like I said, it's a workbook, a lot of white space, and people open it up and go, this is going to be easy. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Right. And the first thing it does is it makes you go through your life journey.
Ooh.
And we all have had experiences in our life that shaped us, but we don't remember. Good ones and bad ones. Some of them could be traumas, right? And here's what I say. You can tell me what your values are, but you can't tell me why your values are. And until you can tell me why your values are, you don't have a solid foundation. Like, well, people are our most important asset. Why do you believe that? Well, because I read it in a book. Not good enough. Oh, because when I was 16, my father got fired and he had a stroke. And I recognized that you have to treat people better. Personal story for me right there, by the way. And oh, by the way, having my father get fired and him have a stroke, do you think that might have been one of the reasons that I was reluctant to fire people? Holy shit. When I figured that out, accountability became a hell of a lot more easier.
Yeah.
I was in my late 30s when I figured that out.
Wow.
Right. So that doing the work. So True North Field Guide, go on Amazon, buy it, work it, take 3 months to get through it. It'll take you to a place where you develop your leadership philosophy. Get a 360, right? Get people to tell you what they think. There are very formal ways to do that, or create a survey monkey and send it out to your people and just make sure it's anonymous and get them to tell you. Or here's an easy one. Hey, Josh, anything I can do better for you? And then shut up and listen.
Yeah.
Right. So do the work on the inside, get to know you better, get people to tell you what's going right, what's going wrong. And you don't need a high-priced consultant to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Firestarter is a high-priced consultant firm. That's what I heard.
That was implied.
So you work with these different companies. You're doing this. Self-awareness is the key. I think it's really important to acknowledge the value that Wally just brought us here by talking about that. That is huge. People pay money for that, and I want to hear from you. So in construction, I shared with you some of my story about how a few years ago, and it's some of what all of this has been born out of. I hired my first consultant, and it was high priced. It was expensive, at least to me. And that's the other thing is, we work as tradespeople. We work in this tangible, well, okay, that piece of equipment cost X, but I can touch it. Talk to me about coaching. And one, I want to address this because, and I know what I'm talking about when I say this, because this was me. People would talk about coaching. I'm like, yeah. I'm not going to spend the money on that right now. Or, I can figure that out without spending the money on that. And I will say the reality for me was, if I didn't when I spent money, man, it got my attention.
Mm-hmm.
I would get homework from our coach, which I hated, by the way.
Yeah.
But I would do it because I was like, I'm paying for this. So talk to me, and to those that are listening or watching, why is coaching so important? And when is a point that you need to really evaluate? To be clear, when I hired my first coach, I did not have the money to hire them. Mm-hmm. I made a decision that I wanted change and invested in it.
Well, coaching is important because if you have the right coach,
mm-hmm.
they can give you 5 answers to the one problem you have.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have 1 or 2 answers.
Yeah,
I think a really good one would have 5 answers, meaning they're expert at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And we can debate, are these the people that help you how to think, or the people that give you advice? I don't want to go there. But so to what does that mean? That means they are able to help you.
Yeah.
So there's an accountability piece to that. I mean, we can use the analogy of a personal trainer, right? I know how to get in shape, but if I pay somebody to stand over me at the gym, I probably get in shape faster.
Yeah.
And then can I stay in shape? So the expertise that coaches bring, the unbiased, unemotional perspective that coaches bring, to be able to ask those questions that nobody else has the courage to ask you, because you react badly when people ask you that question.
Yeah.
Now, once again, it could be a peer group, right? If you're a business owner, particularly in construction, I mean, there's places out there. If you're in concrete, ASCC has great stuff. Benjamin Holmgren's doing some incredible stuff in the dirt world. A Vistage group, whatever. If you're a business owner and you're not in a peer group, you are urinating away free coaching.
I'm sorry. That is. Can you say that again? Because we're going to make a clip out of that.
Yes.
You are urinating away.
Yes, we call that pissing away. But I wanted to keep it classy for the line.
Yeah, well, you're urinating. You're the first person in the history of the line to say urinating on air.
Well,
so
leave it a legacy.
Aaron Witt said I have to piss, but no, that was on his podcast.
No, okay,
he didn't say that on the line. So, wow, okay. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned peer groups. That's another thing where, being a tradesperson, I didn't even understand paying to be part of a peer group. And there are peer groups that don't cost, and there are peer groups, Vistage costs money, but there are peer groups that cost. And I think the reality of it is, though, like you said, it is the best bang for your buck, and you're getting those perspectives from all those other people. And I have learned tremendous amounts from being in a peer group. Actually, a peer group is how I got into the consulting, hiring a consultant.
Yeah,
because I was in a peer group, and it was huge for me. And I'll even put it to you this way: being in a peer group, and I have a business partner, but being able to process shit about my business partner in a peer group. Like you have situations where you need to be able to bring something, and whatever peer group you're in, confidentiality is important.
Of course.
But being able to bring something there and process it, and that you said, a good consultant will give you 5 answers. Well, a peer group, multiply that by whatever.
Yeah.
And especially if it's a peer group of other people that are in an industry that you're in.
Yeah. I mean, I love my wife. She loves me, but there's some stuff she doesn't want to hear.
Yeah.
I remember coming home and I was a pilot in the Marines, and I said something, and over the years she got to learn, that when I said, honey, it was good training, she said that means it was either incredibly dumb, incredibly dangerous, or both. Right. And yeah, incredibly stupid, incredibly dangerous, or both. And there was a lot of that in the Marine Corps, to the point she's like, honey, don't even tell me.
Yeah.
So, I have good days, I have bad days, but I don't think she was, yes, she supports me 100%, but she can't help me with a business problem.
Yeah.
That's what my business peers do. And for me, it's the National Speakers Association.
Yeah.
Where I can go and say, hey, I have an idea. And people go, that's a really stupid idea. Or it's a better idea if you do it this way. So like I said, if you're a business owner and you're not, and you said this earlier, I can't afford it.
Yeah.
Okay, then can you afford to make this mistake repeatedly? Or could you go listen to somebody who has, is a page ahead of you or a chapter ahead of you in the book, who then would say, you might want to think about this.
Yeah.
And that's, look, we've all been mentored. We've all been coached. When you were an apprentice and you had that master driving the truck, right? So why can't we seek that out?
Yeah. The quicker that we can get that in our head, the sooner that we can actually make money by not losing as much as we're losing that we don't even know we're losing.
Exactly. And it goes back to this, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to have to share my warts. I don't want to, which is probably why we have a mental health problem. But I digress.
Well, I'll share a quick story about the can't afford it statement, because I think this is really important. And having you on here, Wally, is really important, because I think that especially in our industry, and you specialize for consulting in the trades. And that's a big deal, because my first consultant didn't, and they helped me tremendously. But we know as tradespeople, it's really cool to be able to talk with someone that gets it and knows where we are and what we're dealing with, that understands what retainage is, that understands what you're dealing with.
It's not a cement mixer.
Yeah, exactly. For me, when you talk about can't afford it, I remember our business was growing, and we do industrial, commercial, electrical work on our construction side. And in that business, as we were growing, we would rent equipment when we needed it. And so we started to really grow, and I had been renting an excavator because, that was some of my experience. I used to do that for infrastructure and duct banks, and our company, we were renting this excavator, and we had this job, and we rented an excavator for an entire year. And I did the math, and I looked at it. It was at the beginning of the year, and I talked with a dealer, and I found out what the lease costs. And then I found out that I had paid in rent what it would be to own the excavator. My point being, be careful that you're not renting an excavator. And there are times where that works depending on what the job is. But for me and where I was, I could lease this thing and use it whenever I wanted, however I wanted. I didn't need to pay for it to come out to this little job or this little job. And I didn't realize that I was spending the same amount of money that I would spend to call it mine.
I call that going broke, saving money.
Well, and that's where, if you're in the place where you're like, I can't afford a consultant, are you really looking at the overall picture?
Right.
Or are you going broke?
So it's a cost value conversation, right?
It is. Well, and I think you also have to decide what kind of business and company do I want to be? If you're a founder, or you're building and you're growing and you're experiencing that, it's like, if you want to go to the next level, you cannot do that alone. You cannot do that alone. And you need other people to show you things and reveal things to you because of your blind spots, so that that is how you become self-aware. We talked about that earlier. The only way to do that is to surround yourself with people that aren't afraid to tell you what they see. And it works really well when you're not asking the people that are your employees, and you're actually handing someone money to search things out and find them and put them in your face.
Yeah, and as a business owner, you know, your accountant, your bank, your surety, if you're on the, you know, depending on the construction size, you know, there's resources are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I shared a mistake that I had made just recently. Wally, what is a mistake that you have made in life, in business, whatever, your choice, and you can take a few minutes to think on this, that you would be willing to share with people, that you've learned from, that you've been able to overcome?
I'll give you two.
He really likes to break the rules and give me two of everything.
Yeah. The first one is
How much am I paying for this?
nothing.
Oh.
So yeah,
Okay,
there's
good.
tremendous value.
Okay.
That's what matters. I paid off my first car, $400 a month car payment, and I then said, "Oh, okay. Well, what am I, 26 at the time or whatever? I need to start saving money. So I have $400.
Yeah.
I will now put $100 into a mutual fund. Where's the 300? Well, I drank it because I was 26 years old, right? But had I put 400 a month into the mutual fund,
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't be sitting here. Or if I was sitting here, I would be in a different place. Now,
Yeah.
I'm okay financially, but I could have been better.
Right.
Now, that 300 into drinking leads to the next
Okay.
revelation, which is that I achieved a level of unconsciousness that said, this is adding zero value to your life.
Yeah.
And when was it, 20 something years ago, where I said, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just done. And was an alcoholic? Maybe. Was it getting in the way? Yes. Was I unproductive at work? No, I was 100% productive at work. Was I productive at home? I thought so.
Interesting.
But what happened when I stopped drinking was that the quality of my marriage got up, the quality of my life got better, the quality of my business got better. I gained clarity and self-awareness that I didn't have when I'm sitting in the Admirals Club or in first class. Well, I'm drinking for free.
Yeah.
Look, this is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So stopping drinking.
Yeah.
And look, I was in the Marine Corps and I went hard and fast, and that's fine, right? But it took me a while to grow up.
Yeah.
And I'm not telling the people they need to stop drinking. But for me though, there was a financial impact of that in the 20s. Like I mentioned, I could have saved that money.
Yeah.
But I was just an asshole because I was not in touch with my emotions.
Yeah.
And now I'm a coach and I'm an adult and I'm a parent and I have greater emotional clarity, greater self-awareness. And when I talk to people as a leader and as a coach, and we talk about behavioral change, because earlier you talked about how do you quantify the value of coaching?
Yeah.
Well, you should see behavioral change. If you don't, something is not working. The coach isn't right, or the person's not doing the work. But if they're both doing the work, you will see behavioral change.
Yeah.
How much? That's debatable, but you'll see behavioral change. So when I'm sitting across from somebody and they're like, "Oh, this is hard. You don't understand." It's like, "Oh no, I do understand."
Yeah.
I haven't been in your seat, but I've been in a seat right next to it.
Yeah.
And behavioral change is possible. I am proof positive of that. So you can throw all your excuses at me all you want.
Yeah.
And I'm going to call bullshit on it. Now, I may not be the guy at that point. Maybe you need some therapy. Maybe you need something else. But higher levels of clarity and joy and self-satisfaction are absolutely possible in this life.
I agree. I think it, it goes right back to all the way back to your TikTok statement. You have to do the work.
Yeah.
You have to do the work. And it's like, it's not easy. I've been reading a lot lately and just this word keeps coming up in different things that I'm reading. And it's the word endure. And, I love history. I love looking at really successful people. And so I've been reading about Carnegie, Rockefeller, And I look at them and I think, wow, how easy, their lives were. And it's like, no. They grasped doing the work and they endured. And so it's like what you're talking about and behavioral change. I love that way to establish value and to be able to put it as something like the piece of equipment that you can touch. You can see behavioral change.
Mm-hmm.
And behavioral change is honestly one of the greatest values that you can bring to an organization, because what that does, you talk about your life and not drinking.
Yeah.
And for you, it was that. And you even, I love how you establish the $300 value. And that's significant. That adds up. If he would have figured that out sooner, he might not be sitting here. He might be on a beach, but you establish that value and that investment. And when we look at that behavioral change in an organization is made up of people. And so if we're growing as individuals in an organization and a consultant or someone is helping us, behavioral change is personal growth. That's what it is. If someone is helping our organization do that, what do you think is going to happen to the organization?
Yeah.
They're going to grow as well. And if an organization grows, that increases efficiency, it increases profitability, and then that gives that organization the ability to invest that and build that and grow that even more.
It's an upward cycle.
It is.
I have a buddy who I collaborate with. He's a professor at NC State. And whenever we start a high-level leadership program, we do a lot of frontline stuff, but we do executive-level curriculum program, year-long kind of things, graduate people at Gettysburg. And he goes, getting ready to change some lives. And he used to say that. I'm like, that's so stupid. But it's true.
Yeah.
And I'll never, one of my favorites is I'm at a company Christmas party. It was Goodfellow Brothers out on the West Coast.
Oh, yeah.
Phenomenal organization. And I'm at a Christmas party. And this woman comes up to me and she points her finger in my face. She goes, "Are you Wally?" And I'm like, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
And I'm like,
"No, he's over there."
Yeah, he's over there. Yeah. And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "I don't know what you did to him, but he's different." And she throws her arms around me.
Oh.
And it was, he became a better communicator, became a better listener.
Wow.
So, we talk about business leadership.
Yeah.
But you talked about personal growth, and that ripples outside of our business, into our homes, into our societies. As parents, I was talking to a guy the other day and I said, "Do you ever get angry?" And he was a company president. He said, "Only with my kids." And I said, "Help me with that." And we started to process it. And that was
a brave statement on your part.
Yeah. And the punchline is, the people who are closest to us are the ones we treat the worst, right?
That's the truth.
Right. I said, so let me get this straight. If a 5-year-old that you don't know did something stupid, you would either ignore them or extend grace to them. And he says, "Yeah, exactly." I said, "Yet your own 5-year-old you can't extend grace to?"
Yeah.
I said, "Is it because you are insecure, or you they're a reflection on you and you're a bad parent?" Like, oh, by the way, I was a bad parent too, right? I yelled at my 5-year-old. So we can be better. We can be better. We're not victims or witnesses to our life. Actually, there are too many victims and witnesses as opposed to active participants. By the way, let's be clear. I screw up my life every day.
Yeah.
Right. Driving over here, we're in Pennsylvania. I stopped at Sheetz last night. They got those whoopies. They're incredible. They're 590 calories.
Yeah.
I understand the economic impact to my belly. But it wasn't a DWI.
Right.
Not that I ever had one, but right. So
nice clarification.
We have to allow ourselves some joy. We have to allow ourselves some joy, because you said, "Oh, man, the world is going to throw enough crap at us that we're going to have to endure."
Yeah.
How much joy do we allow into our lives?
Yeah.
Do you give yourself permission for joy?
Yeah. Well, you bring up a really good point about the Sheetz 500 calorie, what would you say?
Whoopie, yeah.
Here in Pennsylvania, whoopie pies are very, Amish country. Yeah. But you bring up a really good point about acknowledging that we need that joy and allowing ourselves to have it. We have to actually, I find this really interesting. I had to learn this years ago when I would go on vacation. And I made a rule that every year my family and I would go on vacation. And I had to make the rule because if I didn't establish that boundary, being an owner and a founder, we wouldn't have. I would have been like, just like a consultant, I'd been like, I can't afford it, or I don't have the time or whatever. But I had to, I can remember I was with my wife and I was with my kids and I was struggling with my mind to control it because I was worried about all the things that I needed to be doing. And I had to make a conscious decision to be like, no, I'm not going to allow this in my mind right now because here is my 5-year-old. Here is my beautiful wife. And we're enjoying this. And I'm not here, even though I'm here. And I'll make this statement to you. I learned right then and there the difference between proximity and presence. And I'm talking about becoming aware of the joy, but the only way that we actually can grasp that joy is to make the decision to give our presence in that situation.
Yeah.
And, proximity, all right, we're going to talk some personal growth here and value. And if you want joy, and listen, why do we do this if we're not going after joy? We don't want to be a glutton, but it's okay to establish joy goals. And what I would say to you is, if you're sitting with your wife and you both are on your computers and that's how you spend most of your evenings, you are in proximity, but you are not present. And don't hear this from me like I have this great grasp. My wife is really smart and she told me this because that's what I did. And it's like, and it took like almost an entire year of that. And my wife's like, I don't even know who you are. I don't even know what's going on. And she said, I don't accept this,
Gotta hate when they do that.
It's interesting you say that, but my wife is probably the best consultant that I have.
Yeah.
And that is because she has a vested interest in my success.
Yeah.
And she refuses to allow me those things. And in the same with a consultant, you hire a good consultant, they're going to say, either you improve on these things or fire my ass.
Yeah. Exactly
because
right.
I don't want to give you my time if you're not going to see the value.
Yeah, because I don't do failure.
Exactly. And just bringing that back into that joy, I think that ties in with, if you set up boundaries, then you can experience that joy and you can go after it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there's nothing wrong with, if you're going to eat a certain way, but then you decide on this day, I'm going to eat whatever I want.
Yeah. So my buddy says, there's a question that we have, and he says it's a 2-beer question.
A 2-beer question. I love that.
How good can you stand it today?
Yeah.
And you think, what do you mean? Like, how good can I stand? Like, how much permission do you give yourself?
Yeah.
To have a great day?
Yeah.
All this crap going on around us, economic challenges, political, whatever your challenges are. My kid's an asshole. All these things. Look, this is real. It goes back to your endurance word, and that's part of what I think makes joy possible.
Yeah.
But how good can you stand it today? And you ask people that question in coaching, I do all the time, and they're like, I don't even understand the question because we don't allow ourselves to have those. And why does it have to be? Look, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So create those moments that when you're on vacation or whatever. Talking to my cousin the other day, and he's on Weight Watchers, and he says, today's my treat day. Right. And I said, I thought it was cheat day, but he calls it a treat day.
Oh, I like it.
I love it because language shapes thought.
Oh, yeah.
And thought shapes behavior.
Words matter, man.
Right. So, and public speaking, right? We go back to that conversation about, if I'm going to be in a leadership role, if I'm going to be in an influence role, I have to check my language.
Yeah.
Right. And there's 2 ways you can ask a question, or you can be critical, like pace, tone, and inflection. Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Or, hey, help me understand why you did that.
Yeah.
Totally different conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Pace, tone, inflection. That's really good. I mean, that comes back to what I was saying about, well, it's their problem. And it's like, no. If you're saying it's their problem, it is most definitely your problem. And the reality of that pace, tone, and inflection. And sometimes if you're like me, I'm a very reactive person. I'm like, boom, boom, boom. And that fight or flight, wired for the Serengeti. But the reality is sometimes we just need to take a breath. We take a breath, and it's like, I remember, and in my current role in our organization, I just get to deal with the problems when they've gotten to a point that no one else wants to deal with them, which usually means that they're at a crisis
They're
level.
big. Yeah.
And I had to learn, because my first reaction would be like, well, how the hell did this get to this point? And I would be like, I made a mental rule or a boundary in my mind where it's like, all right, I'm going to listen, and I'm not going to answer for this amount of time. And the reason was I needed to be able to give myself that amount of time. And depending on the largeness of the problem, sometimes that amount of time would be 2 days.
Yeah.
And it's like, and the funny thing is, sometimes the problem would fix itself in that amount of time.
Yeah.
But at the least, I would be at a place where it's like, okay, I've dealt with all that emotions. I've dealt with this. I've dealt with that. Now we can focus on this. And then I could bring that pace, tone, and inflection back to. And so when I can't control myself, I'll say, okay, I really appreciate you telling me that. And I take the mental control to not let them know that I'm either losing my mind or I'm freaking out, because that doesn't help them. And I want people to come to me and tell me that the problem exists.
Yeah. And you can articulate, you can say, man, I am really frustrated about this without ripping their head off.
Absolutely.
One of my favorite ones is, hey, when they ping, I don't have to pong.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I think that's something too in our culture and a society. I'm gonna alienate a whole group of people here. If you wear an Apple Watch, you're part of the problem. All I mean by that is we don't have to answer or look at texts as soon as we hear them. Matter of fact, I would challenge you. When I was a kid, my mom said this to me. We had a phone. This is going to reveal some things. And it was you had to rotary dial it, and it was attached to a cord that was there. And
it was attached to a cord?
It was attached.
Oh my God. Yeah.
We had a phone in our house, and I was a kid. I learned how to use the phone, and back then there was also a certain way to answer the phone. It's like, this is the Malott residence. How may I help you? Like, that was the way to do it. And so I was so excited, and the phone would ring, and I started doing this thing where it would ring once, and I would be like, boom. My mother said to me, she said, you need to let it ring 4 times. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, because people will start to expect, and they won't even let it ring 4 times, then they're going to expect that you're going to answer on the first time. I share that story only to say this. You get a text, and they're not getting your best response if you haven't actually taken the time to let your mind process and think about it. If you get that text and you need to respond in that moment, start to discipline yourself to be like, you get a text. I promise you this, no matter what level the text is at, if you wait a minute before you even look at it, the world will still be here.
But wait a second. What about, I get that. I thought you were going to go to the point where you and I are sitting across from each other and you have an Apple Watch and you're checking it every time it comes in, which says, Wally, you are not important to me.
Oh, come on.
And it's like, oh, I'm just checking it. No, you just said I was not important to you. Well, I'm just checking it. Right. And you you took your focus away from me. Look, I'm an addict. I'm an addict to it. Right. So I go to a business lunch. I don't bring my phone in.
Yeah.
Right now, my phone is over there. It's on airplane mode.
Yeah.
So I know nothing is coming in.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's nothing demanding my attention right now.
Yeah.
I'm 100% focused on our audience right now.
Yeah.
In a moment, I'll get there, and there could be 5 or 500, whoever knows.
Yeah.
I will deal with them.
Yeah.
But that tyranny of the urgent.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. Just to be clear, my phone is right next to me, but it's off because sometimes things still come through on airplane mode for me, and I don't want to be distracted from you because this is what happens. I feel it vibrate, and you're sharing with me a story about your dad.
Yeah, and you miss it.
And I miss it.
Yeah.
And it's like, and if we think that we're able to look at that and go right back into the conversation and our mind hasn't, no, we're not.
Yeah, really smart people say it takes you, 20 minutes to recover or something? I don't know.
Yeah, really smart people. Well, as we end here, what is an encouragement that you would challenge or give to people as we step away here?
It's possible. Now, I don't know what it is for you.
Yeah.
Or for Bob or Steve or Betty or Barbara or whatever. But it's possible. Now, what I mean by that is, look, I'm never going to go play in the NBA. That's not possible. That's stupid. But
you went to Notre Dame. You could be the Rudy of the NBA. I mean, it could be a thing.
I was the mascot at Notre Dame, but that's a separate story. Yes, I was the leprechaun. There is a lack of height requirement for that. And I said it. It's possible, right? You can improve your life.
Yeah.
Right. And that wherever you are, and improve could be economic, it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be relational.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, you can improve it.
Yeah.
And that says, well, am I dissatisfied with my life? No. I have a really good life. Can I improve it? Yes. How? Well, I need to lose a few pounds. Probably, we're going to take a nice vacation. We haven't done that in a couple of years, right? So, leadership is about change for better results.
Oh, come on, there it is.
So, if I'm leading an organization,
yeah,
okay, we want it to be better financially, of course, safety, of course, but personally, what does that look like? You talked about learning how to be present with your wife.
Yeah,
that's something I need to relearn.
Yeah,
right, because as the kids have moved out, and I would say this: when I come home, I check the mail, and then I go to the office. It's a habit.
Yeah.
It's probably not a good habit.
Yeah.
But that's something we need to relearn to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's worth the work.
Well, I think that's really, really good, and that it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean that is great. I mean, habits are those things they can be changed. It's just difficult. I read a book once that said that our brain is like butter, and we create these neural pathways, and it's like a hot knife. But once it's created, then it continues in that way.
Unless you recreate it elsewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, but it's possible. And to add to what you said, it's possible. And I would even challenge you, it's worth it.
Yes.
The work is worth it. Just ask Carnegie or Rockefeller. It's hard and you have to endure. It's work, but it is worth it. And the more that you can work on that stuff, any personal improvement or business improvement being better than you were yesterday, today, that should be all of our goals.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
why bother? Dig
a hole 6 foot deep, crawl in, and be like you're done.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So it's possible. And Firestarter, if you're a business and you're out there and you're looking for a coach, I would encourage you. Where can they find you? We know LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But what would they search on LinkedIn?
Well, yeah, just Wally Adamchik. And I post on LinkedIn regularly. My website, wallyadamchik.com, or constructionleadership.com goes the same way. But love to have those conversations. Not trying to sell anybody anything. Just love having conversations just like we have today, because people had those conversations for us.
Yeah.
And that's another, I think, a legacy piece of leadership. And, I always, we talk to older superintendents and stuff, and it's, I'm not a trainer or whatever. Yeah, but you're leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
And somebody helped you along the way.
Come on.
It's our responsibility to help others.
Yeah. That's what leaders do, if you're a real leader.
Yeah.
So, well, Wally, thank you for stepping up to the line. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for the value that you brought here today to our listeners and to me personally.
Thanks.
So, that's it. We're out.